18th of January, 2017. Climb aboard because the train's moving out of the station. We will be talking today extensively about a fourth grade teacher here in Michigan blocking his children from watching the Donald Trump speech to protect them. He's looking out for them. But what it looks like from this perspective is that he is, in fact, pushing his own political agenda upon little kids, is what it sounds like. We read the email here first yesterday, broke the story. It's gone national. We've got a surprise for you. We've got email number 2. Email number 2 to show a pattern of behavior from this teacher, and we've got more input from parents saying this needs to stop. We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll talk about Donald Trump sitting down for the first time in a while for an interview, getting ready for the inauguration just a couple of days away. So much to cover. Plus, Todd Wood, Dr. Herb London, Mike Bishop, the Congressman, will be here, and so many more. So sit tight. I can't believe we packed it all into one handy-dandy reusable package called The Steve Gruber Show.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is The Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, my friends, glad to have you with me today. The phone number here is 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. I'm going to appeal directly to you parents out there today for the program, because if you didn't hear it yesterday, I'm going to read you a letter here in a moment from a fourth grade school teacher in Williamston who apparently thinks that he is protecting the children by not allowing them to watch Donald Trump's inauguration speech. And I'll read the letter in its entirety here in a moment. But I will tell you that I posted this yesterday. I talked about it right at the end of the program. A listener sent it along to me. And I read the letter in its entirety right at the end of the program. Then I posted it on the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page, and it went wild. I'm going to be reading some of those comments from you as well. It has struck a nerve because apparently this teacher isn't alone out there. Apparently other teachers out there think that they have the exclusive right to dictate what your children think. Not how they think and not how they solve problems, but what they think. So this whole notion of, we're going to give them a political point of view, because the message coming out of this whole conversation is your president is a bad person, and therefore we can't let you watch this bad person who's the president of the United States. Can you imagine? Let me point out to you, Hillary Clinton is going to the inauguration. Bill Clinton is going to the inauguration. George W. Bush is going to the inauguration. Barack Obama, of course, will be there. People from all political backgrounds will be there. Every sitting senator will be there. From the extreme left to the extreme right. And yet this teacher of fourth graders, and his political agenda seem to have something, well, he seems to know best for all. So here's the letter that I read yesterday. We'll start with that. The hotline number is 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. And you tell me, because what I'm looking for is anything else, because I've gotten letters from parents on other situations and other concerns, and I've got another letter written by this teacher and sent to the parents that I will share with you a little bit later today. I just let me tell you, there's more. And this story will be updated when I get a chance to write it a little bit. Dear parents, because I am concerned about my students and your children, being exposed to language and behavior that is not in concert with the most conservative social and family values, I have decided to show the inauguration of Donald Trump this Friday, but we will not view Mr. Trump's inauguration speech. Because every peaceful transition of power is a historic moment, I put in a request to the Trump team to preview the speech, but I've not heard back from them. A little sideline here. Gee, a fourth grade teacher from Williamston, Michigan, demands that he gets a preview copy of the president's inauguration speech. You know, the sort of thing that nobody gets to see really before it is delivered. But this fourth grade teacher is so arrogant and so full of himself that he thinks he can dictate and demand a copy of the speech in advance. Yeah, maybe I'll do the same. Okay, next paragraph. I showed the speeches of Presidents Obama and Bush in 2009 and 2005, respectively. But I am anxious about showing Mr. Trump's inaugural address, giving his past inflammatory and degrading comments about minorities, women, and the disabled. I'm also uneasy about Mr. Trump's casual use of profanity. So I sought an assurance as their teacher. I would not be exposing children to language that would not appear in G or PG rated movies. I don't know if Mr. Trump's speech is something that would be provided to the press or concerned citizens beforehand. Let me clue you in, the answer is no. But these plans may change if I hear back from them. Hopefully, Brett Mateer. Well, Mr. Mateer, I doubt that the Trump team is standing by the phone waiting to call you. I mean, who do you think you are? Seriously. All right. And I reached out. I spoke to Mr. Mateer yesterday by telephone. He doubled down. He said, I feel good about what I've done. I said, do you stand by the letter? Of course I do. Now, I asked him specifically if the district had approved this letter. He laughed that off and said, I send a lot of letters home. And I have a letter from the district, from the superintendent in that district, also forwarded to me by another concerned parent about this issue, where she writes that the administration does not give prior approval to such correspondence. The teachers communicating with parents would be the normal course of action, and that she only learned about it through the media and social media. Well, good morning, ma'am. I'm glad you're listening. I appreciate the support. Says she'll need time to follow up and look at some of the specific issues involved here. Now, I've reached out through third parties because yesterday the school district was closed because of ice conditions. I don't have any private numbers, but I was in contact with one of the members of the school board in that district. He assured me he had sent my concerns on to the superintendent and shared my phone number. I've heard nothing back, but I'd like to hear from you at 888-900-9966. Back after this.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
One side's ice and one is fire. It's a circus game with you and me. I'm up on the tightrope.
All right, it is 18 after on this Wednesday. And in 2 days' time, regardless of the gnashing of teeth and the white knuckling, if you will, Donald Trump will become the 45th president of the United States. And I'm just going to make a wild guess here. He's not going to be dropping F-bombs during his inauguration speech. So if you have fourth graders and fifth graders that would like to watch the inauguration speech, it has kind of been a tradition in America for a long time. School children watch the inauguration. It's American history in action. They watch the inauguration, but apparently not in the fourth grade class of Brett Mateer and Williamston, because the president and his team didn't get back to him and give him an advanced copy of the speech. I was thinking about demanding an advanced copy of the speech, because if I don't get one, Damn it, I'm not going to talk about Donald Trump anymore. I'll just be done with it. Hotline number, 888-900-9966. Stan, welcome to the program. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hey, Steve, by that teacher not allowing them kids to listen to that, the speech, that just pretty much guarantees they're going to want to. It's like when rap music, when Tipper Gore started putting warning labels on rap music, the first thing that rap did, it went through the roof.
You're dating yourself, Stan.
That's exactly what's going to happen to these feckless morons.
Well,
like that teacher and all the rest of them.
What concerns me is actually bigger in scope. My concern is that the general impetus that this teacher is giving to these children, the general idea, the general notion, is he's giving them the idea that your president is bad. Your president is bad, and we can't possibly listen to him. I mean, pardon me, but who do you think you are to give that impression?
Well,
If you don't like Donald Trump, clearly I get it. You didn't vote for Donald Trump. Okay, I get that. But to give the impression that he's bad and not to have the respect for the office. You know, I may not have agreed with a lot of what Barack Obama had to say, but I respect the office of the president of the United States. And that's my concern, Stan.
At least you did that. I didn't even do that.
Well, you were better than I was, but the fact of the matter is, even though I didn't like Barack Obama, I would, of course, let the school children listen to him. Oh, and if we're going to talk about profanities, what about Joe Biden? He had a pretty sharp tongue on occasion, but they'd let him listen to him, too. Anyhow, Stan,
exactly.
Thank you.
And with the president, I would let them listen to his speech, and then I would point out his inaccuracies.
Yeah, absolutely. Stan, thank you for checking in. Greatly appreciate it. The hotline number here, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. I'm going to read some of the comments on social media about this, because this is what has laid the groundwork for change in America. You know, this is people with an agenda thinking that they know best for you and your children, and they will decide, and you shall sit there and keep quiet, because they believe in diversity and a variety of ideas and conversation as long as it's identical to their own. All right, so here's another. This was sent to me. This is a letter sent to me by Sergeant Michael Brunger. Sergeant Michael Brunger sent me this note, and you can do the same at stevegruber.com. You can post on Facebook at the Steve Gruber Show, and you can join a whole host of other folks, as you can imagine. This story went national, picked up by the Washington Examiner. I think you'll see this story a little bit later today on some of the national news networks. In fact, I'm sure of it. But Sergeant Michael Brunger sent me this. I was told that you'd like to see these stories of teachers in my school district in Williamston. My son is in Williamston Middle School, and there was a class project, and I'm going to leave the teachers out of this one because I don't have letters written by these folks, so I'm going to let them slide. There was a class project. One group had the name Trump on their project. The teacher told them they had to start over. She asked them if they wanted her to show their parents or the principal what they had done, as if putting Trump on their project was somehow bad. She then threatened them, says Sergeant Michael Brunger, a military veteran in the United States. She then threatened to send them to the principal's office. My son also wasn't allowed to have a picture of Donald Trump with him in another class. He had a picture of Donald Trump next to his computer. The teacher told him he better take care of that right now. This stuff is really making me angry. I spent a year overseas under constant mortar fire, so my family and all Americans could continue living with freedom. Now some teachers want to strip that. Your mother was a fifth grade teacher, I know, and a wonderful person. It's nice seeing someone trying to do something about this. Thank you, Sergeant Michael Brunger, for your service to America, and thank you for the letter. Let's go back to the hotline now. Ray is checking in from Grand Rapids. Ray, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks for taking my call. I just have one quick comment. That teacher Williamson, I don't think, follows the lead of, I'm sure, one of his heroes, Nancy Pelosi. If you remember Obamacare, you have to vote for it to see what's in it. I think the speech, you have to listen to it to see what's in it, and guaranteed it won't be the train wreck that Obamacare is and was.
Well, there's a certainty to that. I mean, there's a lot of things happening for Donald Trump. Obviously, he's going to be president, whether these folks like it or not. But it's the bigger message that concerns me coming out. And this is another letter from that same district. And I've got more from this teacher. Like I said, I've got another email that's just it's just a doozy. It'll come up in hour 2 here on the program. I'll share that with you. But the next letter is a doozy that he wrote the day after the election. You won't want to miss that, Ray, and thank you for checking in. The hotline number is 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. So fourth graders banned from watching the Donald Trump inauguration speech because of his profanity and his abuse of minorities and women and so on and so forth. Elections have consequences. He is the president of the United States. It is history in the making. You know what? Sometimes history, even if it weren't going to be pretty, needs to be paid attention to, even by fourth graders. All right? Teach the children how to think, not what to think. It's the Steve Gruber Show.
Getting your day started with news from around the state and around the world. Common Sense Radio. This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Take me across the water, 'cause I need some place to hide. I done the ranch of Doda, and I sure did hurt his pride.
All right, good. 33 after the hour. I can't help it. It's your eye. What do you want from me? All right. Todd Wood, my next guest journalist for the Washington Times. Probably an old headbanger himself, if you want to know the truth. Todd, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I used to play in a band myself.
Really? What'd you play?
Guitar, lead guitar, years ago.
Yeah. I was a drummer. Can you imagine? Yeah, you and me in a band together? Think about that.
Let's get the band back together, man.
Good Lord. Yeah, I'm putting the band back together, man. I'm going on the road. All right, good. And I want to talk a little bit about Vladimir Putin and Russia, but before I get to that, I can't help but asking you about Miss Chelsea Manning or whatever. His sentence, her, I'm confusing to me at this point, but Barack Obama makes a U-turn, apparently, on his war on leaks and commutes Chelsea Manning's sentence. Your thoughts, your comments. And for those that don't know, just a 10-second explanation of what Chelsea Manning did.
Yeah, sure. Chelsea Manning, or Bradley Manning, was a intelligence an analyst and leaked 750,000 documents to WikiLeaks, which were then published, which then made their way to the Taliban in Afghanistan. This is a touchy story. I've had a lot of people come at me for my opinion on this, but I think the man is a traitor. I used to have a top secret SCI clearance myself, and you just don't do that.
And let me stop you right there, Todd. Let me ask you this, because that's an important point and a very important distinction you made right there. Mm-hmm. What does it take for you to get clearance at that level like you had when you were in the military, or that Chelsea Riley Manning had? And what do you sign? What do you affirm to the government, to your supervisors, to those that oversee the operation? What do you give in an oath?
No, you sign away your life, basically. I mean, he knew what he was doing. I mean, this wasn't something that he just accidentally did. I mean, this is part of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I mean, you are, you sign non-disclosure documents that you will not release this information, which is, highly classified. And what does it take? I mean, there's very in-depth background checks. They go back and talk to your high school teachers. They make sure you are who you say you are. They check everything. Yeah. And, that's...
In fact, I've shared this story before. I had an employee working for me, maybe 10 years ago now, and she was seeking high clearance as part of her return to the military as a linguist. And they came and talked to everybody at the office. They talked to the people at the bar next door that she'd been in like twice, whatever. They talked to ex-boyfriends. They talked to everybody. They went to her old neighborhood where she grew up in high school. You're right. They talked to everybody. And they basically go door to door. Do you know this person? What do you know about this person? Have they ever had an affair? Do they have a problem with drugs? Do they gamble? Whatever, right? They ask everything, because the problem is if somebody can get leverage on a person like that, then they become dangerous to the United States.
Exactly. And so, he leaked these documents, a lot of them. There is, people are saying, well, you can't prove that somebody was. Well, what happened was the Taliban, when they found out, because there was descriptions of the informants in these documents, and they went around and killed everybody they could find that looked like that description. So people say, well, you can't prove an American was killed because of that. But we don't know that for sure. I mean, and the second thing is the tactical situation changed in Afghanistan, and therefore, people wouldn't inform anymore. So there was definitely U.S. GIs who died because they could not get information like they could before. So the man hurt the national security of the United States. He leaked these documents in the middle of war, knowing full well the consequence. And, we used to shoot people like that.
Yeah. That comes to mind. At any rate, he did commute the sentence, did Barack Obama, of Chelsea Manning, formerly known as Riley Manning, because he's gone through some sort of a sex change something or other. And the point here, though, is he did not pardon him. So he still has his discharge, his dishonorable discharge from the Army to contend with. It's not like he was cleared completely, but still commuted his sentence. And both Republicans and Democrats bewildered, angry about this, because of the commutation of the 35-year prison sentence, I guess. But there are some things you can do nothing about, and that's one of them. It's happened. It can't be overturned.
Yeah, hopefully people realize that Barack, what you worry about is that other people will say, well, he didn't get a very large sentence for doing what he did. But, hopefully people will realize that Barack Obama did not have the best interest of the United States at heart. And the next president will not be like that. And the chances of you getting away again are very slim. Zero,
in fact. All right, so let's talk about the next president of the United States, Donald Trump. Donald Trump here. And even though fourth graders in Michigan in some place will be banned from watching his speech, the rest of us are going to watch his speech, many of us. He will become the president of the United States on Friday. And Vladimir Putin, will he meet his match in this man? That's a piece that you wrote for the Washington Times and elsewhere. And Todd, I want to know, what do you think? How do these two match up? It's like going into the big game. How do you see each side matching up?
Well, as you say, I wrote a piece about this. Putin is, a wily guy. I mean, he's typically 3 or 4 or 5 steps ahead of everybody else in what he's doing, where he's thinking. He's playing chess. He's thinking multiple moves ahead. Well, Donald Trump is the same way. And a lot of people say, well, Trump is in Putin's pocket, blah, blah, blah. But I think the exact opposite is true. I think Trump is the same way. He's thinking ahead. He's laying the groundwork for negotiations. Putin has to have an enemy because he's trying to keep the people's mind off their economic troubles due to his policies. So I think that there's a classic good cop, bad cop going on where Trump is, telling the world he's going to give Putin a chance, while at the same time his advisors like Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense are very tough on Russia in front of Congress. So I think Trump is right there with Putin, thinking ahead in this whole game.
I think Donald Trump has been negotiating with Vladimir Putin with every text, or every tweet that he sends out, every public comment he makes. The form of negotiation with Donald Trump isn't always face-to-face and sitting at the table.
Exactly.
He negotiates from a distance. Exactly. Same thing he's done on trade, what he's done with the automotive industry, what he's done with steel, what he's done with other people. He's negotiating all the time because he throws out the wall with Mexico. He's been negotiating since the summer of 2015. They just didn't realize it.
Exactly. Same thing with Europe and NATO. I mean, people say, he's stupid. He doesn't know what he's doing on NATO. Well, NATO needs to change. He's not saying he wants to destroy it. He wants it to be stronger. He wants people to pay their fair share. Germany pays 1% of their GDP. We pay almost 4%. It's a mismatch. It can't go on like that.
Yeah. All right. So, what do you think is going to happen the first 100 days here? What are going to be a couple of things we see right off? What are we seeing next week, Todd? I got about 30 seconds here. What are a couple of things you think you'll see and hear next week?
I think people are going to be shocked at how fast this man moves. I think Obamacare is going to be dealt with immediately. There's going to be obviously a huge amount of regulations that are going to be immediately, overturned. But I think the speed at which Trump moves is what people are going to be surprised at.
There you go. All right. Todd Wood, where can people find your books, what you're writing, what you're up to?
Well, calltoddwood.com is my website. Signed copies make the best gifts out there, birthdays or whatever. So check them out. Thank you, Steve.
There you go. Todd Wood, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you. 41 after. It's Wednesday, the 18th of January, 2017. You're listening to The Steve Gruber Show.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
Wow, you don't get something for nothing. You can have freedom for free. You won't get wise with the sleeves still in your eyes, no matter what your dream might be.
All right, well, the first 100 days are T-minus 3 days now. 3 days out, a little more than, well, really a little more than 2.5 days until Donald Trump becomes the 45th president of the United States. You know, the thing that the pundits said could not happen, that people like George Stephanopoulos sat around snickering and laughing and saying this will never happen. Wonder if Chris Matthews gets a thrill up his leg over this deal. Well, either way, we've got a lot coming our way, and Donald Trump will take the office on Friday, and I'm going to guess he gets right to work, and I'm wondering where he starts, but one of the things he's talked about at length is changing the tax policy in America, simplifying it, making it easier for business and therefore for small business people to run their shops, to employ people to help the economy along. My next guest here, Brian Garst. Brian is the Director of Policy and Communications at the Center for Freedom and Prosperity. Brian, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, it seems that Donald Trump has been talking with Chuck Schumer some on this carried interest bit, and I think you're of the opinion that Donald Trump should reject outright Charles Schumer's tax hiking olive branch when it comes to carried interest. First of all, educate us in 15 seconds. What is carried interest to the average human being so they know what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's not something that most people come in contact with. It's basically the compensation that is paid to the manager of an investment fund, as opposed to the compensation that goes to the investors, which is just an ordinary capital gain. It's basically just the share of that return that the manager gets, which is treated also as a capital gain because it comes from the same funds and it's subject to not being there if he doesn't manage it.
So those that run hedge funds or that run your 401k, the people that are in charge of that, they get paid in this carried interest, which comes into the same way a capital gains increase would come in. Okay, now I've got to figure that's working enough knowledge. Now, why do we want to change it?
Well, and this is something the left has been after for a while, and it really comes down to the fight to how you treat capital gains in general. On the one side, you have conservative or right-leaning economists who argue that it's a form of double taxation because the assets are already taxed, whether they're stocks or bonds, depending on there's corporate income tax, there's dividend tax, and all and so forth and so on. And they're also particularly destructive on the economy. And on the left, you have, based on this kind of Haig-Simons view of the tax base, which was a very ideological view based more on equity and morality than economic rigor.
Well, let me jump in here real quick because I want to, if I'm not mistaken, the tax rate on capital gains when Barack Obama took office, I believe, was 15%. If I'm not wrong about that, and I believe now it's north of 28%. Is that correct? Am I remembering that right?
I believe so. It's been around 15%.
But it was raised dramatically. I think it's at 28.3. I'd have to go look, but I know it's been raised dramatically. So this taxation has gone up dramatically. Anyhow, continue.
Yeah, and so basically, there's been this long-standing fight on, the treatment of capital gains, and, for the left, it's, their motives are obvious. If they can get more tax revenue, they want it so that they can spend it, and this is a group that it's easy to raise taxes on politically just because it's easy to demonize, and it's harder to see the economic destruction that it causes. And so the concern with carried interest, in particular, is because this is an issue where during the campaign, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were seemingly in agreement. Chuck Schumer has reached out to him on that issue. That's something he wants to work on. And the concern is that it would be basically the the camel's nose under the tent for the left to achieve broader-based increases on capital gains rather than what we should be working for, which is really no tax on capital gains because, again, it's double taxation and it's very destructive for the economy.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll ever get to zero on capital gains, but I think a return to 15% would be a step in the right direction because you're right. Somebody's already earned that dollar that was taxed when it was earned. The dollar gets taxed when they spend it, taxed when they invest it. In punishing those that save, that's what's always bothered me. You shouldn't punish people that are saving. You shouldn't punish people that are putting money away for a rainy day. That doesn't make sense to me. You should look out for those people and give them every incentive to save for a rainy day and to keep their debt low and to do the right things. And yet we de-incentivize those by doing exactly what you said, which is increasing the rates on capital gains, which never made sense to me at all.
That's exactly right. There's a lot of double taxation of capital built into the current tax code. And that's, Donald Trump, his tax plan would do a lot of other things to mitigate that. And so we obviously want him to focus on the mostly good parts of that plan and not get into this carried interest thing that would help out the other point of view.
So what do you think is going to happen with the tax plan? I mean, any ideas? Do you have any inkling of how it's going to lay out some of the things that you would like to see besides the, this tax be reduced on capital gains? What else would you like to see to help out small business, to help out the average American?
Yeah, right now it seems like, Obamacare is, of course, repeal is coming first, but there's a pretty strong interest in doing initially a corporate tax reform, which is sorely needed. I think both the incoming president and Republicans in Congress are eager to lower the corporate tax rate, which is the highest in the developing world. It makes it very hard for our businesses to compete overseas. And so that's probably step one. They'll do other things that kind of business jargon, the move to full expensing and things like that, which allow for greater investment in the economy and will make it easier for businesses to grow and create jobs.
Certainly what we need. We need to get the barriers to growth and expansion out of the way. We have to leave it right there, Brian. Thank you for stopping in. Greatly appreciated. Brian Garst, the Director of Policy and Communication at the Center for Freedom and Prosperity. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
All right, coming up in the next hour of the program, email number 2 from our teacher friend that says fourth graders should not be allowed to watch Donald Trump's inauguration speech unless he gets an advanced copy of the speech sent to him by Trump's team. Think highly of yourself, we're taught. Think highly of yourself.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting at all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me, ain't gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, and welcome back to it at 6 minutes after the hour. The story that I began yesterday, I will continue today because it's gotten a lot of attention both here and around the country, as you can imagine. I'm going to read you the letter that I read yesterday from a fourth grade teacher in Williamston, and then I'm going to read another letter that he sent to his class that I've just received here. So we'll give you part 2 of the story, and then I will take your responses. You can write to me at Steve Gruber, at stevegruber.com, or post on the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page. Dear parents, because I am concerned about my students and your children being exposed to language and behavior, this is the letter sent this week, by the way, that it is not in concert with the most conservative social and family values, I have decided to show the inauguration of Donald Trump this Friday, but we will not view Mr. Trump's inauguration speech. Because every peaceful transition of power is a historic moment, I put into a request to the Trump team to preview the speech, but I've not heard back from them. I showed the speeches of Presidents Obama and Bush in 2009 and 2005, respectively, but I am anxious about showing Mr. Trump's inaugural address, given his past inflammatory and degrading comments about minorities, women, and the disabled. I am also uneasy about Mr. Trump's casual use of profanity. So I sought an assurance that as their teacher, I would not be exposing children to language that would not appear in G or PG-rated movies. I do not know if Mr. Trump's speech is something that would be provided to the press or concerned citizens beforehand, but these plans may change if I hear back from them. Hopefully, Brett Mateer. Apparently, he thinks that the Trump team should send him an advanced copy of the inauguration speech. I wonder if he asked for an advanced copy of Obama's speech or George W. Bush's speech. Anyhow, here's a letter written by that same teacher, dated Wednesday, November 9th, 2016 at 2:59 p.m. Dear parents, no matter your opinion of our president-elect, I would like to share some thoughts that I expressed to the class this morning during a discussion of these current events. My goal was to comfort those who were worried about what this election leaves us. Several times I emphasized the point that our country has strong institutions that prevent a single person, no matter how mean or disrespectful his words are, from making sweeping changes that affect the way we live. Making your own choice about treating others with love and compassion and doing and saying things that you know are kind and respectful is still the way we expect students to behave, despite this perhaps being a greater challenge with some of the role models our children see in sports, entertainment, and yes, politics. Working in a traditionally politically conservative community, he works in Williamston, by the way. Working in a traditionally politically conservative community, I find that it is challenging to see diversity on the surface, necessitating a closer examination of and relationship with students to notice those particular characteristics that make them unique. While it's easy to stay right in town and conduct all one's business without leaving Williamston, I have come to know children who have friends of a more racially and ethnically diverse background, perhaps through church groups, sports teams, and scouts. Maybe your child knows someone whose skin is not the same color as his or her own, whose ancestors did not originally hail from Europe, or whose way of worshiping seems to be so very different. Such may be the case for your child, growing up in the shadow of the state capitol and a major university with thousands of international students. It was clear to me from the start of the day that a few of the children were deeply disturbed by yesterday's election. So I finished our morning talk by quoting Bob Marley's Three Little Birds. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be all right. Most sincerely, Brett Mateer. Apparently, Brett thinks that the community in which he works is a bit backwards and not diverse. And apparently, the only way he can find those particular characteristics that make them look deep is a much closer examination. Apparently, diversity to Mr. Mateer is only through skin color, from what I gather here from this letter. Of course, he's welcome to call. I spoke to him yesterday. He stood behind the letter that he sent home, saying that he will not allow children, will protect his fourth graders from watching Donald Trump's inauguration speech. And I bet the parents in Williamston are so relieved that Mr. Mateer is being the champion of the children. Well, maybe that's not exactly what they've said on Facebook. You can chime in on the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page. I'll be posting this letter as well. And the fact that he lives in a community that apparently he needs to travel out of to find any real diversity or uniqueness. On the hotline, Mike checking in from Lansing. Mike, welcome to the program.
All right. Just wondering, when it comes to casual rape, it's not a problem to be discussed or pointed out or anything. Just overlook it.
I didn't understand your casual. Excuse me, I didn't hear you clearly.
Casual rape by President Clinton.
Oh, yes.
And it's continuing. That's no big deal.
There's clearly.
I tried to call the Williamston school system. They don't even have an answering machine right now. So.
Well, I am going to read a letter from Jerry McKenzie here, who wrote me a letter concerning what she wrote to the Williamston schools. I'm going to share that in a moment. But, Mike, I appreciate you checking in. Yes, it's a double standard, and this man has no place protecting our children. Thanks for checking in, Mike. I got her on. Jennifer's on the line. I'm sure you don't have anything to say about this. Jennifer, welcome to the program.
Did Mr. Mateo ever attend university or college?
I'm sure.
I wonder what the daily conversation consists of there, how the language is so pristine. Does he ever listen to the radio? Has he ever gone to a movie? Has he ever heard the rappers? He's a hypocrite. I get so upset with people like that. What are they, living in a cocoon? You don't have any daily life experience?
He's protecting the children, Jennifer, the fourth graders.
He's not protecting the children. He's protecting himself. It's not about the children. He could care less. How does he know what those children are subjected to with the language in their own homes? He's a joke.
Jennifer, always a pleasure. Thank you for checking in. By the way, I've had the opportunity to speak to some of the parents in that classroom who assured me they asked their children, their own children, having seen this letter, about whether any children were actually upset the day after the election. They all said the same thing. No, nobody was upset after the election. None of the children in the school were upset. They didn't have to hear Bob Marley quotes. Doesn't that tell you something in and of itself? Bob Marley quotes. I like Bob Marley just fine. But we're giving Bob Marley quotes? Apparently Bob Marley is our role model in this fourth grade class, but not the president of the United States. What's your takeaway from that? What's your takeaway from that? Mateer. I guess I've been saying it wrong. It's Mateer. Thank you, parents. God bless you all. Mateer. 14 after. It's 18 after on this Wednesday. Met here. Apparently, I've got this school teacher's name was a little bit off. That's all right. Because that's not the only thing that's a little bit off about this whole deal. Would you agree? Fair enough. All right, so here's one of the letters I've got. If you go to the Steve Greer Show Facebook page, I've posted the first letter that was written earlier this week about Mr. Medier not allowing the children in fourth grade to watch the president's inauguration speech, Donald Trump's inauguration speech, because, he might offend somebody. He might just start F-bombing right in the middle of the speech. I mean, how foolish. How absolutely shallow and foolish. And then I just read the other letter that he sent the day after the election because so many children were upset. But I've talked to parents who spoke to their own children about anyone being upset in the classroom. They said no. No, I didn't see anybody upset. But at least Mr. Medier held up Bob Marley as a role model as opposed to, say, the leader of the free world. Apparently Bob Marley, because he clearly should be a role model for fourth graders. Mm-hmm. Good morning, Steve. I love your show and often learn of things that I would not otherwise find in my day. Thanks for sharing the story of the teacher in Williamston. What an outrage. I could hardly wait to get to my computer to send the school board an email. Maybe if more of your listeners took 5 minutes to express an opinion, the school will take action and at least let those children that wish to go to another classroom to watch the historical event to do so. Maybe they could allow the snowflake teacher to go to the cry room and color and have someone else monitor the classroom while they watch the event. Thanks, Steve. Keep up the awesome work and have a great time in D.C. Here's what I felt needed to be shared with the board, and here's the letter that Jerry McKenzie sent to the Williamston Board of Education. Good morning. I'm contacting you today regarding a story released in the media surrounding a fourth grade school teacher in your district. Apparently, he feels that he is more than a teacher and is allowed to share his political beliefs in the classroom. I would love to know just what authority gives him the right to speak out publicly against President-elect Donald Trump and to withhold the rights of his students from viewing Mr. Trump's speech this coming Friday. The classroom is no place for him to spew his liberal political viewpoint. It is very possible that many of the families in your district are actually Trump supporters. This is one of the many reasons that change is needed and coming to our public school system and the liberal attitude of those that were hired to teach. I am fairly certain that expressing political views is not part of the curriculum. Miss DeVos will be making changes to the system, which is badly broken. This teacher should not be allowed to express any views, either conservative or liberal. I do not reside in your district, but do work with several of those children who attend your schools. My advice this morning is for all of them to contact you. It is not about whether or not they support President Trump, but it is about what the teachers are hired to do. It is too bad that Friday is not a student count day. Perhaps then it would make a difference when parents decide to keep their kids home to allow them to view this historic event. Children need to be taught to respect the office and our election process, regardless of a win or a loss. The idea of all receiving a participation ribbon with no identified winners or losers is not reality, and is a big part of the problem with the protesters needing Play-Doh and cry rooms. Children need to know you win or you lose, and you learn from the experience. I do not support the decision that has been made in the classroom and feel that it is your job to set the situation straight. Thank you, Jerry McKenzie. And thank you, Jerry, for sharing that letter. What do you think? I mean, I'm sure this is not the only place that's going on. I'm guessing you can check the hotline number at 888-900-9966. I'm sure there are other parents that are concerned in districts not only across this state, but around the country for this kind of similar, I consider, quite frankly, bad behavior. I can assure you that as my mother taught fifth grade for some 3 decades and my grandmother for 4 decades, they didn't send letters home like this. And I can tell you my mother was no fan of Jimmy Carter, for example. But she didn't disparage the man and send home letters saying, we don't want the children to see Jimmy Carter. We don't want to talk about Jimmy Carter. And by the way, let's talk about Bob Marley. Good Lord. Jenny checking in from Brownstown, Downriver. Jenny, welcome to the program.
Hey, Steve. I'm praying for everyone's safety on Friday, and I would just like to say this. If those poor kids are, quote, unquote, worried, they're worried because of the propaganda he is spewing at them. So there you go.
Well, he and a lot of other folks, I agree with you, Jenny. There's a lot of propaganda being spewed by the likes of John Lewis and school teachers like this that have no place whatsoever, Jenny. And I appreciate, as always, you checking in. I do appreciate that. The hotline number here is still 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. By the way, also forwarded to me a letter from the superintendent of that district who said, paraphrase, the administration did not give any prior approval to this correspondence, that being from Medier, Brett Medier, the teacher in this case. No correspondence. The correspondence was not approved by the administration. But she goes on to add, does the superintendent would not be normal policy or a course of action anyway, because they allow free and open communication between educators and the parents of the kids in the classroom. If there is an issue, it's the expectation that the parents will bring it to our attention immediately. Well, instead they brought it to my attention, which in effect got it to your attention. So I appreciate you listening there. Thank you again for contacting directly. I do hope that the black eye that the district gets out of this can be, will not be applied to the entire district. Well, I hope not either. I hope you do your job in that district and explain to a 4th grade teacher it's not their place to protect the children from hearing the newly elected president from giving a speech about the future of America. A speech that I'm quite sure will include exactly 0 profanity. Get your act together. Or as my mother would say in her classroom, clean up your act. Back in a moment.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
All right, 33 after. And people are so excitable today. I can't imagine. There must be something in the water. Everybody's just all so excitable today. Well, welcome to it. Easy on the coffee. You know, if your hands start to shake, you should probably take a break from it. My next guest, though, his hands never shake because he's always on it. Dr. Herb London, president of the London Center for Policy Research and the author of the new book, The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. Dr. Herb London joining me again. Doctor, welcome back.
Well, pleasure to be with you. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. All right, so we're, less than 3 days away, something like that. And Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States. And to me, the media just, the closer we get, the full-on panic. I mean, they're having panic attacks, for lack of a better term.
Well, I'm laughing.
You're a doctor. You tell me.
Well, I think what's happening here is that the left cannot accept the idea that Donald Trump is president of the United States. I mean, the seamless transition that normally occurs from one administration to another is not taking place in America today, in large part because the left has become relentless in its attack on this man. Look, I think Donald Trump conducted himself in a somewhat odd way during the course of the campaign, but he won fair and square. He got 57% of the Electoral College vote. He won overwhelmingly, so there is no doubt in my mind he is president of this country. Now the question is, what do you do to accept Donald Trump? And I think that these people who are crybabies ought to come to the conclusion he is our president.
Well, it's a simple test. Are you an American? Yes. Is Donald Trump president? Yes. Then, therefore, he's your president. See how that flow chart works? It's pretty simple. If this, then this. Anyhow. But as we go forward, Doctor, some people criticizing Trump about his tweeting. That's been going on for a long time, including former CIA Director John Brennan, outgoing now, saying you need to be careful with the tweets. What do you make of that?
Well, look, I think that he's probably right. I mean, I'm not a great fan of John Brennan, but I think he's probably right about the tweets. I think Donald Trump would be wise to take that cell phone and throw it away. My own feeling about it is you don't make policy through 140 characters. And I think that it's a mistake to try and change the way in which people think through a tweet. It's also true that there is a lot of people who are throwing bait out there, and Donald Trump rises to the bait. He should not do so. Look, Meryl Streep is entitled to her opinion. You don't have to respond to her. There are other people out there like Mr. Lewis from Atlanta. You don't have to respond to him. My feeling about it is that the President of the United States will take an awful lot of slings and arrows. There will be people who criticize. That doesn't mean you have to respond to every criticism. So I think that he would be very, very wise to stop trying to tweet and respond to every criticism he receives.
Yeah, a lot of criticisms out there. We've been talking a lot about education today, and I don't know if it's going on around the country, but here in Michigan, teachers are wearing red in the classrooms today and have been to protest Betsy DeVos being nominated to be the Secretary of Education because, Betsy DeVos is not part of the teachers union. She's not part of this whole big monolith of education. So she's from the outside, so therefore she certainly couldn't know anything about education because she's not one of them.
Well, one of the things that Betsy DeVos will do is provide for parental choice. And that strikes me as one of the cross currents in American politics. Here you have a lot of African Americans who will undoubtedly want to embrace this idea. And I think it should be embraced. There is no doubt in my mind that if you have a school that can provide a better education for kids than the prevailing government school, it ought to be entertained. We are interested in the education of kids. I remember Al Shanker, who was head of the AFP, once saying to me, when kids start paying dues, I'll care about as much about them as I do the members of the teachers union.
And there it is. And there it is, Dr. Herb London. Beautiful comment. When kids start paying union dues, we at the union will start caring more about them. If that doesn't wrap it up and put a bow tie on it, I don't know what does, sir.
Well, this is precisely the issue. This is exactly the issue. I mean, I think that, it's one thing to have a union, but the union ought to address the questions of education in America. And we are falling behind in many respects. If you have kids who cannot read and write, they are handicapped. And those handicapped kids cannot find jobs, even if the society grows at 4% a year, GDP growth a year. The fact is that America is lagging behind because our educational systems are not doing well. And if the unions are part and parcel of the problem, then I think Betsy DeVos is absolutely right to be talking about school choice.
Well, exactly. She should be talking about that because, as Donald Trump pointed out, and a lot of us have talked about for years, and I don't care what the reason is. The fact is we have failing schools in some places. We can go back and forth about what causes it and this and that, and it could be, a whole host of things. The fact is, it's time to solve the problem. It's time to solve the problem with the violence in Chicago. It's time to solve the problem with too much regulation on business. It's time to solve the problem with the military using spare parts from boneyards to make jets fly. It's time to solve a lot of problems. I'm tired of hearing about why there's problems and debating about how we got to where we are. That doesn't matter, Doctor. It's time to solve problems. That's my opinion.
Well, you stated it very well indeed. I think that's exactly right. I'm not interested in what are the conditions that led to the problems we face. I'm interested in solving these problems, and I think they can be solved. The issues that you mentioned are all matters that can be addressed. And hopefully, during the course of this Trump administration, we're going to see some changes that occur. And I think it's not a bad place to start with education. I think Betsy DeVos has the right instincts. And if she says, look, what we want are schools that work, that should address the concerns of every parent. Every parent should say, look, I want my kid to go to the best possible school. It doesn't make any difference if he's Hispanic, if he's African-American, if he's a kid who just arrived in the shores of the United States. He should have the opportunity to get the best possible education he can. If our schools are not doing it, then we need other schools.
And I agree on that. I think, the education, but we've been talking here this morning about a fourth grade teacher here in Michigan who is blocking his students from watching Donald Trump's inauguration speech because he says he needs to protect the children from Trump, who's been inflammatory and degrading about minorities and women and the disabled and casual use of profanity, as if Donald Trump's going to go out there and start F-bombing during his inauguration speech. This is the kind of mentality, in my estimation, that led to the victory by Donald Trump in the first place.
I think that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, these are the people who feel as though they've been left behind. They feel as though political correctness counts for everything. They feel as though those people who are marching up and down K Street in Washington, D.C. really don't give a damn about them. These are the people who are now saying, well, look, we're very resentful. We embrace Donald Trump. He's our voice. And it's time for the elites in America to understand that there are people who are speaking out who have been left behind for a considerable period. These forgotten Americans are now remembered, and they're remembered by Donald Trump. This is a new America, and this chapter in American life, this change in American life, I think is bringing about some very fundamental change.
I think that's exactly true. Dr. Herb London here with us on the program. Okay, so we got about 2.5 days. Donald Trump takes office. You tell me, what are a couple of things you'd like to see happen in the first few days? What do you want to see by next week? We've got about 30 seconds for the last word, Doctor.
Well, and look, I think one of the first things you want to do is try to go out to the nations that have been a part of the United States' alliance system and say to them, you can count on the United States again. You have not been able to count on us for a considerable period. Go to President Sisi of Egypt and say, you know something, you've been repudiated in the past, you're going to be accepted now. The nuclear umbrella may be necessary for the United States. We are going to be firm allies. We're going to work with you and people like you in order to promote American interests abroad.
There you go. Dr. Herb London from the London Center for Public Policy. Always a great conversation, sir. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Well, thank you for the great work you do. I greatly admire what you stand for.
Thank you. Dr. Herb London, everybody, on the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back with Congressman Mike Bishop.
Covering Michigan and the world from his bunker below the bridge. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, like I said, 2.5 days now until Donald Trump takes the oath of office to be the 45th president. Another man who has already taken the oath to continue representing Michigan's 8th District is Congressman Mike Bishop. He joins me today. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Good morning.
So you're already underway and have, you've got a lot of work in front of you in this session. Balancing the federal budget is one of the big things that have been talked about a lot, as you well know. As you look at Donald Trump coming in, are you hopeful about that? And what do you think about taxes and budgeting and debt?
Well, no one knows too much about what we'll see in the days to come, but I can tell you that the agenda that we've put on the table for the January 20th and 100 days thereafter is very aggressive. It includes all of those items that you just spoke of. We're talking about health care. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about the national debt, and doing what we can to bring this budget back into a position where we can keep it balanced in the years to come.
Well, there you go. I mean, obviously, one of the things that's been talked about a lot, and you and I have talked about this actually, are the roadblocks, the things that prohibit small businesses from growing, that inhibit businesses from expanding, that being too much regulation, too much red tape, too many hurdles to get over. And I think that you and I can agree clearly we need to make it easier for people to go to work in America.
It's interesting because I've been in this job now for 2 years, and the one thing that I can tell you that has surprised me the most is the amount of regulation that I've seen come through Congress, as in terms of complaints and oversight that really government, elected government, has no control over, because agencies and departments have become so powerful and have metastasized to the point where they consume so much of public funds that if we don't curb this and get control of it quickly, I'm afraid that it's the part of government that will grow into oblivion and really bring this thing down. I think that's our biggest task, is to make sure that we rein in the size and scope of government, and that really begins with the regulation that you're talking about.
Well, sure, and the scope of government, again, it's expanded. But some of the things that Donald Trump's talking about, and of course you, being part of the body that holds the purse strings, have a lot of control over this. But he is talking about expanding the Navy. He's talking about improving the military readiness in many different parts of the United States military, being the Navy, the Army, in different places. Is that something that you agree with when you look at the state of readiness today for American armed forces?
I've been briefed on the state of readiness across our military and in many different areas of the world, and our state of readiness is not as good as it was prior to World War II. So we need to invest. We need to make sure that we do what we can to take care of our military. It's a primary function of government, a core function of government, to protect American citizens and American interests. And that being said, the military has got to be one of our primary investments. So yes, I support the president-elect in his goal to do what we can to rebuild and prepare.
Well, here's the thing. I guess what I want to ask you, kind of in a bigger picture, obviously Donald Trump is, I think it's fair to say, an unusual candidate throughout the entire campaign cycle. He won with 57% of the Electoral College, despite what some on the left may say. He is a legitimate president. He won large in the Electoral College in large part because of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, states in the upper Midwest that have had, it's no secret, a tough go economically over the last 10 years anyhow. What do you hope for as you look at the first 100 days of his administration? What do you look for in places like not just taxes, but in jobs, in Obamacare, in all aspects of government? What do you think should be the priorities? What would you like to see happen, and what do you hope for?
Steve, I go back to about 2009, Michigan, when we as citizens were fed up with the current direction of our state, and we decided that we were going to change it. And it was a tidal wave of support for a new kind of leadership. And in my opinion, that leadership since 2010 has made a dramatic difference in our state. Night and day, in fact. We're now the comeback state. I talk about it all the time in Washington about Michigan. And the same thing has happened in Ohio. Same thing has happened in Indiana, Wisconsin. They're all doing the same things, making these changes. And the only state that hasn't in our Midwest region is Illinois. And they are in the deepest hole they've been in their history. In fact, I would say if there's any state that's going to be bankrupt here in the near future, it's going to be Illinois, because they have run their state into the ground. This is exactly why Michigan made the change it did. This is why our country made the change it did with the new president, the new leadership. I think what you're going to see in the next 100 days is going to be aggressive. It's going to be all intended to address the most important issues of our country, which are jobs in the economy, health care, national security, all of these things that are so important to everyone, but seem to have gotten backburnered over the past 8 years. And I'm excited about it. I think there's a lot of great opportunities ahead. In the first coming days, you're going to see changes to our health care. Obamacare is going to be, we're going to replace that with something that's patient-centered, that is actually affordable, and that will give patients the keys back to their own health care. After that, you're going to see massive tax reform. I can't even begin to tell you how excited I'm about this, because there is a great plan afoot to address tax reform, which I think is the precursor to any kind of change to our economy, to bring back those jobs that we were talking about, bring back those employers to the investment, and create jobs. That is so key in this country right now, to reboot this economy and get it back up and running again. 1% growth is not good enough. We've got to do better.
I agree with that. We need to do better. I mean, Michigan has suffered long enough. We took it longer and harder than pretty much anywhere else in
Absolutely.
America, and it's time to change direction. We got about 30 seconds left here. We're with Congressman Mike Bishop. Are you optimistic heading into Friday in the next few weeks?
Absolutely. I really do believe there's great opportunity ahead of us. It's up to us to get that job done now. My goal is to stay optimistic, to work with this incoming president. I know just about as much about him as you do, and but what I do know is that he's already talking about the same things that we've been talking about. Governor Pence has been right there with us too, and he knows what he's doing in Congress. And I think this is going to be all uphill, but very good stuff in the days to come.
Well, Congressman, I look forward to an exciting few weeks, to say the least. I'll be in D.C. for the inauguration, as will you. Maybe we'll run into each other. But thank you, sir. Have a great day.
You too, Steve. Take care.
Yeah, Congressman Mike Bishop here.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, and welcome back to it. I'm glad to have you along for the ride today. The hotline number, if you'd like to join in and share your point of view, is 888-900-9966. We take all comers. We encourage those on the left to call and tell me why it's okay to prevent fourth graders from watching Donald Trump's inauguration speech. That the decision of a fourth grade school teacher in Williamston, Michigan, Brett Mateer, deciding that he has to protect the children. I read this letter, yes, I'm going to read it to you again, and then I have a follow-up for you. Because I think it's important for you to hear the other part as well. But earlier this week, Mr. Mateer wrote this. It was sent to me by a concerned parent. And the reason the parent sent it to me and didn't approach the teacher, and I've heard this from some different parents, and you think about this as a parent or a grandparent, he didn't want to approach the teacher directly because he didn't want his student treated differently. This father didn't want his student treated differently because he pointed out that he believes that this teacher is completely out of line. Here's the letter from Brett Mateer. Dear parents, because I am concerned about my students and your children being exposed to language and behavior that is not in concert with the most conservative social and family values, I have decided to show the inauguration of Donald Trump this Friday, but we will not view Mr. Trump's inauguration speech. Because every peaceful transition of power is a historic moment, I put in a request to the Trump team to preview the speech, but I have not heard back from them. I showed the speeches of Presidents Obama and Bush in 2009 and 2005, respectively, but I am anxious about showing Mr. Trump's inaugural address, given his past inflammatory and degrading comments about minorities, women, and the disabled. I am also uneasy about Mr. Trump's casual use of profanity. So I sought an assurance that as their teacher, I would not be exposing children to language that would not appear in G or PG-rated movies. I do not know if Mr. Trump's speech is something that would be provided to the press or concerned citizens beforehand, but these plans may change if I hear back from them. Hopefully, Brett Mateer. Yeah. How arrogant are you? Yeah, the Trump team, they're going to give you an advanced copy of the inaugural address. Are you sober? Seriously. This guy is so arrogant and so self-absorbed, he thinks that the Trump team ought to send him a copy of the speech in advance. Well, gee, I think they ought to send me a copy of the speech in advance. Otherwise, I will not cover Donald Trump on this program. He either says, I need to know. I demand to know. I mean, really? Wisen up. Hotline's hot. Sam in Grand Rapids, welcome to it. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good morning. You were mentioning about Maxine Waters.
Oh, yeah. Another lovely member of Congress. Go on.
Well, I remember a story from years ago. I believe it was Maxine Waters that when the Mars rover was rolling around on Mars, she asked the team from NASA if they could roll it over to the place where the astronauts put the flag down.
Yeah. Yeah. That's Maxine Waters. You got it, Sammy. Yeah. It's a precious bunch, isn't it? It's a precious bunch.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing who can get elected to political office nowadays.
My turn to run. Thank you for checking in, Sam. Thank you very much. You need a good laugh this morning. Mike standing by in Ann Arbor listening to 1600 Wham over there.
Good morning.
Mike, welcome to it.
Good morning, Steve. First of all, that teacher is outrageous, and any parent that doesn't go to that classroom on the day of the inauguration is an idiot. If I were the parent of any of those kids, I'd bring a portable television, I'd put it on his desk, I'd turn it on, and I'd have the kids watch the inauguration. That is totally ridiculous. And any parent that is afraid to confront that teacher is not a good parent, period.
I'm more concerned about the other letter written the day after the election, where he basically says, in effect, there's too many white kids in my school district, and because they're not of color, I have to look very closely to find those particular characteristics that make them unique. Really?
Is this teacher black?
No, I don't believe. No. He has to look.
I love him quoting Bob Marley. I mean, that is a fantastic example for young children. Bob Marley.
Nothing like a guy who smokes 8 pounds of weed a day to be a role model for children. You got it, Mike. I got it. I got it.
Also, one more thing.
Okay, real quick.
One more thing. As far as Mr. Lewis is concerned, isn't it funny he's been caught in a lie and now he can't talk anymore?
Oh yeah, he's not an icon of the civil rights movement. He was a guy that participated. He boycotted other inaugurals. Yeah, a hack. That's a fine way to put it. And thanks for checking in, Mike. Always a good amount of information there. Let's go to WKMI territory, headed south to the Kalamazoo region of the state. John checking in from Portage. John, your thoughts today?
Good morning, Steve. The comments of that teacher are so irrational. It's almost as though he's mentally ill.
Almost.
Someone could think that the speech of the President of the United States on his inauguration is going to be vulgar. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. This guy needs to be examined for mental illness. I mean,
he's protecting the children. John, he's protecting the children. John, you don't understand. No, he's protecting the children, John. What is wrong with you? We need to save the children.
No, he smoked your weed and my weed last night.
I wondered where it went.
Statement.
Oh, Lord.
Where it went.
Is that where it went? I'm looking at the dog going, hey, did you get into the stash? What's up? Anyhow, John, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. That's just part of it. Here's what I'm going to do. I've got this second letter where Mr. Mateer says, working in a traditionally politically conservative community, I find that it is challenging to see diversity on the surface, necessitating a closer examination of and relationship with students to notice those particular characteristics that make them unique. Gee, I guess the white kids in your district aren't unique enough. You have to look deeply to find those characteristics. Really? Really? 888-900-9966 is the number. I'm going to post that. It's the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page. Go ahead, click like, tell your friends, share it across the universe. You can also find it on several other places. It's gone wild. It's gone across the country, as you can imagine, because the reaction of other folks are just like what you're hearing here or reading on Facebook. Go figure. Common sense wins the day. 14 after on the Steve Gruber Show.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
All right. The hotline is a popular place, a place I encourage you to stop by at 888-900-9966 from time to time. This hour brought to you by DTE Energy, providing safe, reliable natural gas to businesses across Michigan. DTE Energy. Know your own power. Quickly to Tom in Grand Rapids. Tom, what's on your mind?
Yeah, good morning, Steve. I'd like to comment on this Bradley Manning thing. I'm a veteran. I served 3 years in the United States Army. In my day, this guy would have been shot, along with the guy who was a deserter, that Bo Bergdahl guy. He deserted his post during a wartime situation. He would have been shot. In George Washington's day, he had deserters shot. Now, the president's granting these guys a lot of clemency, and it tells me where he's coming from, too, because, hey, this guy's releasing POWs from Gitmo, and they're returning into the battle. What the hell is that?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Thank you for checking in, Tom. As veterans are concerned, obviously. I'll try to get a few more calls in at the bottom of the hour, but first, want to go with Michigan Rep. Peter Lucido here. He submitted the constitutional carry package for those that believe, in the right to carry a concealed weapon, to eliminate the permit requirement for carrying a concealed weapon, allow for possession and transportation of firearms, as well as update multiple firearm references in current state law. Mr. Lucido, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, so I'm a gun owner, you know that, but I also think that it's a great idea for people to take a class to get educated about firearms before we turn them loose. I do, I don't. Go ahead.
So let's talk about this. Number one, if you have a CPL, then you know that you went through training and you went through shooting the gun.
That's correct.
And that's all you need to do, then you get your CPL. But the problem is, when you have the CPL, you're held to a higher standard than an open carry. With open carry in this state, you do not need to take any formal training. You do not need to carry it a certain way. You do not need to do anything other than strap the damn gun on and walk around with it, which is appalling to me, because those that went through the formal training, those that spent the money, those that were taxed, the way I look at it, have less rights than those that didn't do anything other than strap a gun on.
Okay, I don't disagree with you on the points you've made so far. In fact, you seem to make sense to me. In fact, I would go one step further. I think that it would not be a bad idea, not only in Michigan but across the country. We do all sorts of mandatory training and education in this country. Why would you not make gun education, whether you want to be around guns, use guns, like guns, hate guns, but they are prevalent in American society. We agree on that, yes? So therefore...
Yes, wait, no disagreement. I've got no objection. In fact, I will concede that everybody that buy a gun should have some kind of training, just like we do with a driver's license.
But I'm taking it one step further. I think we should make it a part of our curriculum of middle school, 7th or 8th grade, that people are taught about firearms. I mean, if you're a student in an 8th grade class and you find a firearm and you're not familiar with it, it can be dangerous in the hands of those that don't know how to use it. So therefore, if we train people enough that they can neutralize the weapon, for example, wouldn't basic education about firearms be a good idea?
Basic education is always a good idea to give knowledge and power. Let's talk about the Second Amendment. I don't want to go ahead and sugarcoat a Constitution that has amendment provisions. There was no attachments. There was no restrictions. It said one has the right to bear arms. All of a sudden, legislators over the years decided to put conditions about CPLs. They started to put conditions as it relates to gun ownership and how you're supposed to carry it, and it can't be in the car. And if you have a CPL, you have to identify it to the police officer. Here's what I believe. If your intention is to be lawful, and it has to be lawful because we currently have a law out there that says you are not allowed to possess a firearm if you're a convicted felon. And also you're not allowed to buy a firearm if you're a convicted felon. That goes to the gun dealers. They have a duty not to sell a gun. It's those that are the seedy, the unscrupulous, that won't identify to a police officer. So everybody that's pulled over, the way the bill's written, you have an obligation to tell that police officer officer, I am in possession of a weapon.
That's right. And if
Why?
you don't,
we don't need
if you
need
don't
to crank people up.
Yeah, and if you don't, man, the penalties can be stiff if you don't do it particularly and exactly right. Now, let me ask you this, because I've had this conversation with lots of folks. I've taken the training, I've done the background, done all that stuff. Yep. Been hunting. Well, I had to be 14 when we first started hunting in Michigan, so it's been a long time. I just dated myself. Somebody had to. Anyhow, that's good humor. Anyhow, my point being is this: I believe that anytime there's a transfer of a firearm, I'm okay with the idea of getting the yellow sheet. What is it? 4463 is the form, something like that. Anyhow, if I'm selling a shotgun to my neighbor, I think it's okay to fill out that form because my neighbor may have gotten a restraining order against himself that I'm not aware of. I'm okay with that. A lot of people give me a lot of pushback and a lot of flack for that, but I don't think that that's much of a bar to set.
I don't either. And you know what? I'm gonna analogize this with car and titles. I'm transferring ownership of a vehicle. I sign the back of a title. I put the odometer. How much problem is that we're causing? So I agree with you too. I also agree that if a police officer is up in your wheelhouse, you've got an obligation, for Christ's sakes. We can't even keep good cops because of all the shootings and everything. So at least explain to the police officer, hey, officer, look, no disrespect, no harm, I have a weapon. And if those gun holders out there say that's a violation of their Fourth and Fifth Amendment, I doubt it. Because we're trying to be lawful, we're trying to be peaceful, and we're trying to be reasonable and common sense.
Well, there you go. I think that wraps it up quite nice. Common sense. It's a rare commodity today, sir, but it's a good thing to have around. Pete Lucido, I appreciate you coming on here. Next time, have a little passion about what you're talking about. Why don't you? I mean, just fire it up a little bit.
You know what it is? It's a very controversial issue, but if we break it all down to what's best for this state and what's best for the people that are in this state, I think this law is a good law, and it lands everybody in a place where they need to be.
Well said, sir. I'm going to leave it right there. You have a great rest of your week. Pete Lucido, appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye now.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
Sorry, I was packing my bag. Getting ready for that. Travel days are always what they are. Travel days, of course. Of course, it is what it is. Travel days are always interesting and always challenging. Fortunately, and going into D.C. anytime in the next few days, probably, well, you can only imagine. You can only imagine that it would be difficult because, well, the whole place is packed, right? The whole place is packed with people. And, of course, if you're going to be flying on an airplane and being around lots of people, well, you know, what'd you say? Okay, good. If you're going to be on an airplane and you're going to be around lots of people, Alex just whispering in my ear, he does that a lot. Yeah, the possibility of, picking up the flu bug, that's for sure. And the advice is always the same. Get yourself, inoculated. Get yourself ready for flu season. Dr. Eden Wells here, Chief Medical Executive with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. I haven't gotten my flu shot this year. I'm sorry, but I've been misbehaving apparently.
Uh-oh.
How many people in Michigan get the flu shot? How effective is it? I mean, from year to year, sometimes it's more effective than other years, is it not?
Yes. This year it looks like we have good coverage for the flu viruses that are circulating. The vaccines that we have available for people are a good match, according to what the tests have been showing so far. As your first question, I think in Michigan we've never excelled in the compared to the rest of the United States in terms of getting our folks vaccinated, and I think that some of it maybe is we've had a couple fairly mild years where the flu has been late, and then that catches people by surprise.
And so, where are we in flu season this year? Is it early? Is it late? I mean, what are you predicting?
I'm predicting think that this has been a little slower than I've seen in the last couple years. It is beginning to increase. There's no doubt about that. But Michigan, compared to even the states surrounding us, is still in a low activity area. We're kind of translating to regional, meaning that we're getting some areas, particularly in southeast Michigan, that are picking up. That tells us we're going to be revving up fairly quickly. So if you haven't gotten your flu shot yet, I would recommend doing so because it does take about 10 to 14 days for it to really take effect.
Now it seems to me, I was I'm hospitalized for a few minutes a few weeks back. They were out at the time. Is that happen from time to time? They dispense so many they're a little short from day to day on occasion.
That could be within a hospital or a particular doctor's office, but there is loads of influenza vaccine available for everybody. So if you can't get it at your particular doctor's office, the pharmacies all around towns, all throughout the state, have vaccine available, and every local health department has vaccine available too.
So how many people in Michigan on average get it, and how many illnesses does it prevent? I mean, this is important. I mean, we know that the elderly and young people, especially infants, are more susceptible to the flu, and make no mistake, the flu can kill you. And let me just be blunt, doctor. The flu can kill you, so you might want to not get it.
Well, and that's exactly right. And I can't give you exact numbers at this point because it does vary year by year. But I can say that the effectiveness of the flu vaccine, there's been a lot of stories about that over the last couple of years. Is it effective? Is it not? Well, the one thing this year we have noted is that you won't see people providing the nasal spray because that has not been shown to be as effective as we like. But those flu shots that are being given, there's many different types of them, have been shown to be effective at preventing the flu. And if they're not, as we get older, it may not prevent the actual case of the flu, but it would prevent your complications. And that's what gets people. So if my elderly parent, my mother or father, get vaccinated, sometimes that vaccine may not be as effective, but they're vaccinated. If they do get the flu, it's going to be milder, and they're going to be less likely to get the complications, such as pneumonia and death. So the shots are effective and clearly shown year after year that they prevent you ending up in a hospital, and they prevent the complications, which often can lead to death, which really frightens us.
Well, and let's be honest. Who wants to be in the hospital? Raise your hand. All right, nobody raised their hand. I can assure you, I can't see it. Nobody wants to be in the hospital ever. Right. And the complications, and of course, if you're in the hospital, you run the risk of being exposed to other things than ickiness, which is my technical term for the day, doctor, is ickiness.
I like that word.
But you just don't want it around. I mean, honestly, you just want to avoid that as much as possible, correct?
That's right. We tend to see an uptick of the influenza-type virus. It's spread by coughing and sneezing and such. But I heard you speaking about being on planes or after gathering for the holidays. That's why January we tend to start seeing this increased activity because the ickiness spreads well between people.
Yeah, there you see, you like that word. I appreciate
like that word.
All right, so let me ask you, is it an old wives' tale, or was my mother right when she said, you wash your hands, young man, because that'll keep you healthier?
She must have been a person who worked for the public health service. That's absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
And people are frustrated sometimes because they said there's got to be something more magical for prevention. But what we've noted is that truly it's as people, as we interact with each other, we easily spread our ickiness between each other. And a lot of that is by the hand to mouth. We cover our sneezes or our cough, and then we go shake hands. Or, as you mentioned, we could be touching a doorknob or the plane surface if you're flying in a plane. Coughing next to somebody on a plane, I've always worried about that with my own elderly parents who fly sometimes. So I think knowing what you can do to protect yourself is the best prevention, obviously, is the flu shot. And then, and you're going to prevent a lot of other viruses and illnesses if you wash your hands often.
See, there you go. See, it's like my mom's right here with me, you see.
It's great.
There you go. Doctor, she was a school teacher, by the way, not public health servant, but close enough. Dr. Eden Wells. Well, yeah, she was like, nursemaid, doctor, nurse, teacher, all, you know how that all works.
Yeah.
And my mother, God bless her, for that chore. Any last thoughts on how we keep ourselves healthier for the duration of this kind of miserable wet winter that's not a lot of snow, but just kind of gray and wet?
Yeah, it really has been, and I will caution people that it has been alternating very cold and then very warm. So I've noticed that there's been, even just in my own workplace or among my colleagues and friends, that there is a bit more respiratory illness going on. It's not necessarily the flu, but what happens is it sets you up to be susceptible for cold viruses and flus, I think mainly because people are probably getting stressed. So keeping active, good nutrition, washing hands, and trying to just not stress your body in terms of your severe cold.
We've only got about 30 seconds here, but I had a caller just ring in and ask, okay, why is there a flu season? Why does it come and go? Okay, fair question. You got 30 seconds, Doctor.
I got 30 seconds. Okay, well, a lot of this is because in the humidity and the type of weather that we get in the winter is very conducive. The influenza virus loves to take hold in people, and then it's easier to transmit between person to person when we are sort of congregating in the winter time as well. So we see it all year round, but it definitely peaks up in the winter.
I got it. Everybody congregates around the Thanksgiving table, and there they are, all that ickiness. Anyhow, there you go. Doctor, great conversation. You were terrific, and I thank you for stopping by.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much.
There you have it. Dr. Eden Wells, Chief Medical Executive with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Wasn't she great? We'll be right back on the Steve Rivers Show.